And this one may require some explaining. It should show up on that monitor.
Oh, sorry.
Okay. Save you bending around. Take a moment to just review that.
Your Honor, could we have a date? It has time stamps, but we have no idea when this was occurring.
That's fair. Leave it January. Back up. Tell us when that conversation took place.
That one should have been in February.
The 4th, maybe?
The 4th.
So we're talking about February the 4th, 2019.
Yes, sir.
It gets a little bit confusing because at the top of this document, it's got a January 1, but that's when the screenshot was taken as opposed to the actual conversation, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Now, when the defendant is telling you I can administer that, what's she talking about?
She had texted me and told me that she had pneumonia, and she was still coughing really bad, and she wanted to know if she could get some steroids. She asked me if I told her that was fine. I usually do pills. She asked for a shot. So I was going to give her that, send it in for her to the pharmacy, and I asked her if she wanted me to come by and give it to her. She said no, that she could administer it.
And what did you prescribe for her pneumonia?
Solumedrol.
Generally speaking, what is that?
That is a steroid.
And that's the medication you offered to in pill form, but she wanted an injectable.
Prednisone pill form, but she wanted an injection. She asked for Solumedrol.
Okay. And an injection, is there any way to use the item you prescribed, the specific item, without needles?
No.
Pay attention to the next item. Where the defendant's telling you about the morning of February 6th.
Yes.
From a physician's assistant's perspective, is there any significance to 103 degrees?
Well, you're pretty sick, probably.
Okay. It seems like such a stupid question, but I got to ask it anyhow. How would anybody determine their precise temperature to 103 degrees?
By taking it with a thermometer.
At 10:39. That's the first time indicator on it. Telling you that Mr. Cochran is sick too, correct? Just a moment. Do you recall getting a request from JD, your husband, to come to the Cochran house?
Yes, I do.
About what time was that?
About he had came and told me that Natalie had texted him and said she needed help, and he was going to her house. So he left, and 30 minutes later, I want to say 12:30-ish, he called me and told me that Mike was sick and that he needed me to stop by the house. And I said, for what? And he said, because I cannot get her to take him to the hospital, and I'm hoping that if you come here that you can convince her to take him to the hospital.
Did you go to the Cochran house?
I did. I was headed to a meeting at the Board of Education, so I said I would stop on my way. And I think I got there at like 1:11 is what my timestamp said.
When you got there, what did you see?
Michael was laying on the couch. John, one thing on the phone that John had asked me to do was to bring a thermometer, that Natalie didn't have one. So when I got there, he was laying on the couch sleeping. Michael was laying on the couch sleeping. She had the blood pressure cuff on his arm. There was numbers on it as if it had just been taken. She had the pulse ox on his finger, which monitors like oxygen rate and pulse rate. And that all looked normal. Nothing alarmed me when I saw the numbers. The only thing I had with me was the thermometer that they had asked me to bring, which was a ear scan. I walked over to him and
Walked over to Michael?
to Michael. He was laying on the couch, and went to take his temperature and told him, Michael, this is Stephanie, because I knew how Michael was. If he had just woke up and saw me standing there, he might punch me. So I said, Michael, it's Stephanie. Don't hit me. I'm going to take your temperature. And he turned his head towards me. I took his temperature. It was fine. And then he was laying on the couch. They had a recliner that kind of sat behind the couch. And I sat down on the recliner. So his head was behind. I was behind his head. He was in there. And talked to Natalie and John for a few minutes to see what had happened and what was going on.
What were you told had happened?
I was told that, I knew.
Unless it's a statement of the defendant, I object to hear.
Fair enough. Did the defendant tell you what happened? Did Natalie Cochran tell you what happened?
Yes.
What did she say?
She told me that they had been sick that morning, which she had said through text. She said he was throwing up and he had a seizure or something in the kitchen and fell on the floor.
Did anyone tell you that, did the defendant tell you he hit his head at all?
No. I asked her 3 times if he hit his head, and she said no.
Okay. When you were able to physically see Michael Cochran, could you see any evidence that he hit his head?
No.
Did you look for that?
I was sitting behind him. He was laying on the couch, and as we were talking and her explaining how it went, I was, looking at his. I didn't see any, scratches or bumps or any bleeding or anything from his head at all.
Did you talk back and forth with Michael Cochran that morning?
Not that, just at the house when I said I was going to take his temperature. That's all I said to him.
Did he say anything in response to
No,
that?
he turned his head to me.
Did you ever hear Michael Cochran say anything during the time you were there?
No.
Was he awake or asleep at the time?
Sleep.
Total time, if you were estimating that you were in the house, would be what?
28 minutes.
28 minutes. Of the 28 minutes, during that period of time, Michael Cochran was on the couch.
Mhm.
The defendant was present.
Yes.
Was John there too?
Yes.
Jake, your husband?
Mhm.
Was anybody else there?
No.
Did you get a picture of Michael on the floor in the kitchen at any time, or did that just go to other people?
I did not get the picture by text.
Did you ever see that picture?
Yes.
When did you see it?
Natalie showed it to me at the house.
While you were there? Or
Mm-hmm.
That's it? Who is that?
That's Michael.
After you left the house, what was the next contact you had with the defendant?
I had went to a meeting, and when I come out of the meeting, I texted her to check on things because when I left there, she said she was going to let him sleep it off.
Did you ever advise her not to have him checked by anybody?
Never.
What did you specifically advise her?
That he needed to be checked. She told me that he had a history of seizures, and he had stopped taking his medication. And I said, he has to be checked. I said, even people with the history of seizures, anytime they have one, they need to be checked. We never know which one's damaging. And she said she was going to let him check it off. I kept offering, like, I would go with her. We would go, we could bypass Raleigh General if that's not what they were wanting to do. We could go to Charleston. She said he wasn't happy at Charleston either. I mentioned Princeton. Nothing was good enough. I said, well, let's call Chris and see if he'll get, the airplane. I'm sure he'll fly him somewhere.
Chris, we're talking about
Chris Davis.
Did she accept any of those suggestions?
No, she said she was going to let him sleep it off.
So if you were quoted as the one that said, I'm going to let him sleep, I think you should let him sleep it off, you didn't say that.
Never.
That came from her, not
Yes.
you. Now, after you left, and other than text messages just to check on people, were you ever made aware that the defendant's sister was at her house?
Yes. She told me in text message her sister was there and they had changed his clothes.
Did you find out why it was necessary to change Michael's clothes?
She said they cleaned the urine off, so I assumed he had lost muscle control and wet himself.
What was the significance to that to you as a physician's assistant?
That he had lost muscle control. So he needed to be in the hospital.
Around that same time, the defendant reported some vital signs to you, correct?
Yes.
What's the significance of any of those?
I'm sorry, what?
What, from a physician's assistant perspective, what's the clinical significance of those numbers?
Those numbers are good except for his respirations are down. His blood pressure is a little up.
Anything to be particularly worried about?
Yeah, the respirations are low.
What about the blood glucose? Did you check the...
Never. I don't have one.
So if that number came from the defendant and not you,
Right.
did you ever check his blood glucose?
No, I don't have one.
And blood glucose is another word for what?
Blood sugar.
that same day, you get another text from the defendant. From your perspective, what does he mean was by that first line, just like go back?
He was in the hospital in November. He was sick. He had gotten sick. They went to Charleston, and she had told us that night that he was in Charleston that they thought he had a brain tumor. So at 10 o'clock that night, John and I left to go down there to be with her. He was out of it at the hospital, but he kept waking up like combative. But they were giving him like benzodiazepines at the hospital to sedate him. So I took it she was saying that he was sick like he was in the hospital.
From your perspective, was it the same on February 6th of 2019 as it had been in late fall of 2018?
Yes, and the fact that he was given medicine for sedation.